Welcome to Inside the Set with SETDECOR. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with SETDECOR. I am Beauchamp Fontaine, SDSA, and today I am pleased to welcome set decorator Melanie Raab and production designer Julian Wagner to discuss their collaboration on the riveting historical drama September 5 about the 1972 Munich Olympic hostage crisis from the perspective of the ABC sports crew. Welcome, Melanie and Julian, and thank you for joining us.
Hi. Hi, Beauchamp. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
It's very exciting to talk about the movie here.
So I want to begin by expressing my gratitude for providing such authentic sets. I think they really brought the story to life. And during my second viewing, I had the opportunity to appreciate the incredible attention to the detail in your work, particularly the way you gathered equipment so true to 1972. I'd like to give you each the chance to share how you became part of the team on September 5. I know that you have worked together, I believe, on at least 3 projects, and one of which was with the director, Tim Fehlbaum. So, Melanie, since this is a set decorator forum, I'd like to start with you. And then, of course, Julian, we want to hear from you.
So hello from my side, Beauchamp. I'm very excited to be here today and also excited to be with Julian and having this cool conversation about a movie that we're very proud of.
You should be.
Yeah, it's very a little bit overwhelming actually what became of this movie, and yeah, we're very happy to see it going through all these stages of recognition. And yes, we worked on more than 3 projects together. Julian and me actually were working together since 2011. I met Julian during my film school experience and did my first set decorator project with him. And then we had a couple of years going back and forth with other team and crew and projects. And then, yeah, then it worked again. And since that time, we're having a great collaboration on every project that we did. I really enjoyed it until now.
Yeah,
And
same
Julian,
here.
I guess you can speak to how, I know you'd worked with Tim, but how you guys decided to come together on this project.
Yeah, I think collaboration is the key word for this movie in all directions. Let's start with Tim, because Melanie has already answered the question about the collaboration between us. Which I totally agree. I'm so happy to have this, friendship and partnership with Mel more than 12 years now. And we were actually working together on a project. And I guess right in the middle of it, it was the first time when Tim approached and he asked me if we want to do the next movie together with, it was more it was sure from the very beginning. We already worked on the colony, and this was so intense and exciting to establish this kind of collaboration. And we knew we just want to wait for the next script and the next project to be done. And he asked me if I would like to do something completely different this time, because the last movie was a sci-fi. Mm-hmm. And I'm quite used to, take a lot of creative license when I get a script. I like to, build my own worlds. And this time he asked me to do something really, really authentic. And it was, I guess there was a little question mark at the end when you asked me that, more about, can you do that? And and I thought about it, how to approach it, and then we discussed it a bit, and the script was just mind-blowing. And then, of course, I asked Mel right away. She was just at the office next door. If we want to do the next one together, as always, or most of the time. My first thoughts when I got the script were about that new and unique new perspective of the media, and about the responsibility of the media. And this was really appealing, as we all knew about the event, we all knew about the tragedy, and the Olympic Village. To me, it became like a big stage where everything happened, and it went live, and it was broadcasted all around the globe. And this was new. This was a new technology back in the days. I'm quite sure this was the first event.
The first satellite, yeah.
The first event where they could go live because of satellites. And yet the story was told within a single studio. Mostly. Of course, we had locations, and we can talk about that later, but it was all told within this small and self-contained world. And designing this small world in a way that it conveys such a big story, and to make it tangible, and this was very, very appealing to me, and I think also for Mel. And this was the initial starting point, for us to get hooked.
So how much preparation did you have for such an in-depth exploration? And it's clear that you felt that responsibility not only to tell the historical event itself and be deferential to the victims, but to the journalists and their work. That was equally, well, I mean, certainly there have been films, documentaries, and other films about this event, but this was so well done in that you are exploring issues that we are all, very familiar with today. I mean, what your responsibility is as a person who shares data and breaking news, if you are in that position. So how did you feel that you were able to achieve that balance?
Yeah, first and foremost, this was in the beginning really about the technology, all the technical equipment. That was something we, from the first reading of it was clear. Okay, this is the thing that makes up the set, that we
Colossal
need to be
challenge.
authentic.
Colossal challenge.
Yeah. And so we brought in our buyer, Johannes Faller, to do first researches month before we really started prepping. So to get an overview if we are able to even achieve the level of authenticity that we wanted to achieve in the set, because most of the rooms that are just majorly defined by the technology. You don't see any walls anymore. You see the technical equipment.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that is very interfering with the architecture, and depending on the architecture. So that was something Julian also had to work with, or work around, or find a design that's appropriate to have a room that works, and bring in the technical equipment.
But I have such a closed space, but that actually was expansive enough I read that you had no wild walls. And so, what a challenge to make it contained enough to have that sense of claustrophobia and the escalating tension at different times, and yet be able to practically get light in, get cameras in, get the crew in, everything. I mean, and you never once, I commend you both, you never once felt that was revealed. It always felt tight and contained. And, sort of like there's a Frank Lloyd Wright element of compression and release, which I thought was excellent, and really helped with the tension when they would actually go outside, and you had such a neat element with all of those screens so that you were seeing what was happening, but that also participated, or contributed is a better word, with the frenetic feeling of the event. I mean, I would think that a control room like that must always feel like very heightened and at a pace that is unusual for us, certainly as filmmakers. You know, we aren't working at that pace. We're not seeing things happen live and at that pace. So I think that was achieved incredibly well. And again, I will continue to commend you too, because I think it's an excellent, excellent film. But it seemed like you had to you created a period documentary, pretty much. You know, I saw somewhere that they're called docu-fictions, and knowing what you had to have gone through to acquire that amount of equipment, I think we would all be fascinated to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, as you said, responsibility was a big key word in the very beginning. Of course, because of the event and the tragedy and all the victims, but also for the media perspective. And we knew that here there was no room for mistakes. I knew this will be in focus, and it's all about details. And we had basically there were two intentions and also challenges, and both came together. And the one big challenge was to find precisely the balance between the fiction and reality. And because, I mean, we see our role as designer and set decorator as well in supporting the narrative and the story and the emotional work of the characters. And at the same time, it should be super authentic. And this was quite a task. I mean, you always have that very often, but here we knew this is a thin line, and we had the intention to also support the way Tim and Marcus wanted to shoot this movie. They have established a documentary style, and they wanted to follow the cast and the narrative from the beginning to the end, without having a break, without having a minute to breathe. And this was mirroring the way the journalists were working, because they were just following the story and the event, and they didn't have any time to discuss the moral dilemma or ethics at this moment. They just did their job. And to do so, we had to make sure that the space works, and that the studio is built and designed as a continuous studio set, and instead of just building several mini sets where it would just go from one set to another, which makes the workflow much easier, but not here. Here it was about everything had to be lit before, everything had to be precise and detailed. And I mean, the set decoration team, Melanie and her team, they did such an incredible job by adding layer of detail to this. In a way, the design, really followed the function of the technical devices, but this was just a blueprint. And then they added layer of details to make sure that every shot and every minute, 360 degree, could be a possible detailed shot.
Well, and there's such long takes, and that was a challenge too, for you to be able to keep those worlds together, and again, make it expansive enough that the DP could achieve that, and yet again, maintain that claustrophobia, which heightened the tension of the story. So it's incredibly well done. I know that in other interviews that certainly, Julian, you have done, I haven't seen anything that you've done, Melanie, but you did talk about your colleagues who, and you've just now mentioned, your prop master and your buyer who came on ahead of time. But I think that it is really fascinating for us if you can go a little bit more into it about where they had to go to find this. There's certainly not a prop house that is 1972 broadcasting or audiovisual equipment. So it sounds like you guys scoured certainly Europe and went to museums and basements and private collectors. So I think we would all love to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, that was quite an adventure to find all these people, because actually it was based on a a memory that Johannes, our buyer, had, because for another project 20 years ago, he found this, or by accident, he ran into a huge collection of German 70s TV equipment. He didn't need that much. He just needed something, but he remembered that it was there when we started working together. And from that point on, he tried to contact the person who was in charge at that time, but the collection wasn't existing anymore. It had been distributed and sold. And so he found somebody who bought something, and then it was like a little chain reaction, because all these collectors are a very specific kind of human being, and they're really clicking together, and they have their own networks. So if you find one piece of the puzzle, you're very lucky to find more. So yeah, Johannes went around to do the first researches on his own, through private collectors, basements, garages, to Netherlands, to Belgium. He also had some contacts to the US, and then museums in Germany, and yeah.
And then they had to get it all working. It sounds like the need for it to all function was great, and that must have been an incredible undertaking.
Yeah, I was very happy, because when we decided to do the project, I instantly contacted some people I work with, some set dressers / electricians, prop makers, and they were really enthusiastic working with us on this project. So I had a great pool of very able people to help us refurbish everything, and coming up with great ideas where we had to improvise a little bit, because not everything you could bring back to life. You had to modify a little bit in the inside, not on the outside. So that was a great challenge, and it was great fun also to see that. And also in such a short period of time, they were just, every time you came into the workshop, it was just amazing to see them sitting on all of these control panels, and all the other machines in the transmission room, all these little monitors back to life, all the buttons that need to be lit. And they had so much fun doing it. And they had really hard, long days, but it was just, it was a pleasure for everybody.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
people got to really showcase their unique talents, and I'm sure they had fun doing it,
Wow. And it was, I mean, this looks a bit like we had, a lot of time, to fiddle around, but actually we only had 6 to 8 weeks to build the sets, and simultaneously to refurbish all the equipment and to dress the sets. And
That's
the crew
nothing.
was, no, that's nothing, but we didn't have much more time in the studio. So we had the studio ready from beginning of January, and end of February we wanted to shoot. So we have prepped stuff before. We also rebuilt a few, like a Lego set in other studios, and then everything was assembled in really no time. And I always felt, so humble and grateful when I came into the studio in the evening shifts, and these prop makers and set dressers and technical experts were still sitting there, and I couldn't even tell what they are doing. They just had tons of cables around them, and they're just trying to get everything, back to work. And in a way, it was not only getting them back to work, but in a way that it didn't make any sound, because it had to work on set. So this was an extra challenge. We wanted everything authentic and period, and it should work. But please now
be silent.
Silent, And these machines were incredibly loud back then, in the 70s, especially these VTR machines. And so the VTR room there we took a lot of creative license for this room, because they have normally been really small rooms without windows, because these machines were way too loud.
Interesting. Yeah.
I like to point out something else, because it's not usually like you have furniture in a room that you are still able to move. We had to do some quite some logistical wonders with construction, also because to move these machines, especially the VTRs, it was a hell of a job to put them in place, and but you wouldn't want to move them anymore. Also because they needed a little bit to be, covered on the sides, on the floor, and yeah, it was the set. As soon as everything was in place, was what it was. You didn't have any floating walls, nothing like that, or nobody could say, okay, tell you during shoot, just please remove this, we need to put the camera there. It wasn't.
Yeah, you really needed some. You needed some heavy machinery as well to
yes, we did
so
have some
we couldn't build the set around it, or we couldn't build the set and then get the machinery in. So we needed to. It was like a puzzle, a bit like the research itself. Right? It was really was a puzzle. So, and before Mel and the team and Johannes Faller, because before they could just start to collect everything, and we had to discover by images and by what we got told what kind of devices we need, because in the first research we were lucky to have access to eyewitnesses from the time, and we were talking to Jeffrey Mason, and they provided us with a lot of information and intel, and this was great for the writing process as well. And we got a few images, but these images were like, it was about the crew, and we just had the blurry background to analyze what kind of machines have they used. And so we started to make a mood board for all the machines in all the rooms, and it became a bit like an investigative journalism itself, to find these pictures. And then sometimes, we found an old catalog. Johannes Faller, at some point, he brought in this catalog from Bosch, from the manufacturer. Yeah, it was
huge. That was quite a find. You guys must have been so happy that he found that.
Yeah, this was really, really a gift. But we had to find out what kind of machine from this catalog were used for the ABC studio.
Just one thing that I think that the audience would be just interested in is that when you refer to Jeff, he was the young man who came in at the beginning from his date, and all of a sudden was thrust into a position that was really quite something. And were you guys able to utilize him as a resource as well, or was that really much more Tim, the director? I think it's incredible, and he's got to be in his 80s, I would think, right?
Yeah, he's, I guess, 70 something, but he's still, his memories are quite sharp, and he was in contact as well with John Magaro, so they could exchange things. Most of the time he was talking to the producers and to Tim, but we got our chance as well. And
did he have photo reference for you, or not really?
He did, and the crew did, but as I said, these photographs were not about the studio set. So we didn't have any pictures from, I guess we had one image from a corridor, and we had no pictures from VTR rooms or the transmission room, and we had 4 to 5 valid images from the control room, but it was, the focus was on a crew member, and we never had a full image. So we had to, it was like a puzzle. So we had to find out, okay, this corner looks like this, that's the other corner. This picture looks great, but it seems to be from 76 or maybe from the 80s, because these pictures were, in the, after 20, 30 and more years, these pictures get a bit mixed up, and then you find someone who tells you something and shows you a photograph, and this photograph is 4 years later, and we wanted to be very precise. We had a very high standard on accuracy, and so yeah, we had to fill in these gaps, or with creativity, or we had to find another picture somewhere in a basement.
I would like to add that we also, I didn't get to personally speak to the Jeff, but I got the secondhand information. But the collectors, they were also not only collectors, but they were also former TV technicians, so they could give us advice and also show us how things worked and how they were supposed to work, or are still working if they are. And that was that was, like you mentioned in some other interviews, that was a present from the set decorating God, that we had people helping us with figuring out what goes where, because we had these vague visual references from the pictures out of books or manuals or old not newspapers, but like magazines that were distributed, and catalogs, but still, and then we had to.
Great to have those people be willing to come help. And and as you both used the word puzzle many times, it sounds like it was a very complicated puzzle. So
yes, yeah, and then you sometimes, because you have your own vision and you want, things to look like you imagine it. And I remember also, like, when it was about the editing bay, and Johannes Faller and Mel, they came in with one of these editing tables, and I asked Johannes if it also comes in blue. We were super happy to find one, and Sam was like, can't we find another one in a more pastel blue color?
oh wow.
So it was always like, give or take. We had to, but it was about details. The most detailed set I've ever done.
I did read about your use of forced perspective in the control room. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The decision to focus on the media also changed the genre throughout the process. So this became a one-room thriller, which I really always wanted to do, such a thriller. But it also meant that this one room, this contained space, needed to support the maneuver of the team, the acting, all the emotions that arise throughout the whole story. And so we had to, and the room should look authentical. And this was the most precise room of all the rooms. And to bring this all together, it was a very difficult thing to do. And we first worked a lot with the size of the room, so that the size had enough space for that huge cast and the crew, but it shouldn't be too big. So we wanted to have this trapped feeling, wanted the cast to be trapped in the set. And then we built a few things movable. So the huge control desk was movable, and you had the possibility, it's all about inches, to push the cast a bit more to the wall and to create a bit more pressure, or we could relieve them. And in the other direction, the video wall, this huge wall, to a monster, was movable as well. So you could work with that and try to produce a bit more pressure, to give a bit more light to the faces, or to relieve them. And the ceilings had different heights. So in the middle of it, in the center, there was no ceiling at all, and we just covered the space with curtains. And these curtains were also historically accurate, because they were to block out the light from the screens. And the ceiling on top of the video wall was the lowest ceiling, and the walls to the left and the right had a little false perspective to create a zooming effect, so that the cast and everyone and the image starts to get pulled in. And behind was the darkest wall behind the video wall, and there has been a window and a door as well to another room, so you could open this and to relieve the pressure. And the same was on the opposite side, behind the cast. This was adjoined with the studio set, and it had several windows as well, and a door. So, and you see this in this one scene when they go live, and then at some point they decide to make a break, And then, you know, it's like, you know, the light changes, the doors open, the windows are opening, the shutter opening, and then suddenly you feel the effect when the pressure gets, you know, gets relieved. And this is something we were playing with, you know, with these details and tricks. Very analog.
Well, we've talked a lot about the studio, and I will probably come back to a bit of that, but I would love to hear what it was like to recreate a lot of that archival footage. I know that you guys were tasked with doing that. Certainly one that I think would be familiar to a lot of our viewers, of course, is Mark Spitz in the pool winning his 6th gold medal. Was that pool? I can't imagine that pool looked anything like it did in 1972. Was that a redo, or what did you guys have to do to achieve that?
The Olympic Village is listed. It's a listed complex. So most of the buildings still exist and they haven't been changed much. It's more about, you know, graphics and more about things that have to get reinstalled, and a few set decoration items that we had to add, or we had to color things. But the swimming pool has been changed already a few years, or directly after the Olympic Games, they've changed it. And then I guess 10 years ago, they renovated it. And so it didn't look like it was back in the days. There are only a few angles that we could use, and this counts for all the sets in the Olympic Village. We always had to be very precise in choosing the right angles, because we couldn't afford to just rebuild the huge Olympic swimming pool.
The most challenging part for us was finding these dividing lines, because they look very different today.
The lane markers, yeah, they transport you to the 70s. They really do.
But also we were lucky to find some, and yeah, then the rest was bits and pieces, and then lots of camera work of Markus, that, yeah, to find the right angles to get that authenticity again. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the details, I think I would like to add, if I may, at this point, because we were referring to the details before, it was a great challenge, because it's not a personal, there's no personal rooms, no personal interiors. So this was a special challenge for us to find details that are bringing life to the sets, except the technical equipment. So yeah, it's usually it's mostly office stuff, but you had to close the gap between being a boring office and a lively place. So that was also very, yeah, a fun thing to do, actually.
Well, and I'd like to commend you for your, you know, your restrained approach in your layering. You know, I mean, I certainly appreciated you had the jackets on the backs of the chairs and the memos taped everywhere, and you know, you all of those touches helped to make the environments feel so real, but you approached it with such care and balance, and you know, it didn't become cluttered. It just became truly elements of life, and I think you handled that exceptionally well.
Yeah,
thank you.
This was really, you know, a set decoration job to do that, and I was so impressed sometimes because, like, really every drawer and every desk was filled and dressed. And even though, you know, we never talked about this desk to be used, but you could just, you know, look in every angle. And as you said, we wanted to have it filled with details to make it look vivid and authentic, but it shouldn't look cluttered because these guys are working there, and it's a working environment, and it's all about state-of-the-art equipment. And in every image, it should feel like this is, especially in the control room, you know, we wanted to create a feeling a bit like in a NASA control center. And so with all these details we wanted to have, we still had to obtain this clarity of a pure technical and very modern space. And this, yeah, you had to find out how to do it. And step by step fill it with details that were accurate.
Well, and clearly you both worked closely with your director of photography. You've referred to him a few times. What were some of the challenges you faced to provide the kind of coverage needed for the long takes would be one thing. You've touched on that quite a bit with the construction of the set, but also did you have to follow any specific guidelines for the color palette to achieve that really desaturated look, which you mentioned needing the editing table in a powder blue. So I think that you did have to stay within some narrow confines within the palette, it seems.
In a way, I must say this is, if I compare to other movies I've done, that's quite a colorful movie. I mean, the basic guideline was the Olympic Games, because we had, to work with the archival footage that was already there. So the Olympic corporate identity already provided us with a few colors. And then we took this palette and we just eliminated colors we didn't want to. And this became the first column for the color palette. And then the rest was the technical aspect. There's a certain gray that they used back in the days and it's still using. It's called television gray. Yeah, well, I'm very. The name is not really appealing, but it's a quite warm gray that they have used and are still using for phones and everything. So you would, if you see this gray, there's directly a link to this time and to these technical devices. And from that on, we worked in shades of gray because the original control room, for example, was just one color. And we wanted to create depth and we wanted to create a structure in the room. So every wall, every panel, everything, the ceiling and everything had a different shade of gray. So I think there were like 8 to 10 grays in the control room. And it's nothing that you can see on the first sight, but you can feel it because it's not flat. And these
It gives you that depth. Yep.
Exactly. So, and with Marcus, I mean, we established our collaboration already in the previous project, and I think we both have a very what we have in common maybe is an idea for for an image and for colors, and this goes very. It's a very nice ping pong that we all three are playing with colors, and I integrated his opinion very, very early on because I always like that, because we are a team. I mean, we need each other. That's what I think in a collaboration with the DP. And so if we would do color tests and make a palette, I usually do a few pictures and I send it to Marcus in this case and say, okay, look, this is where we are going. This is what I like. What do you think? Then we make tests, and I also normally ask the DP, what in a specific room, what the color temperature you would like to use, what kind of light sources do you want to use, and then I can have these light sources on the set while designing it. I can say, okay, using this light, my gray needs to be darker or lighter, or warmer, colder to have this effect. And yeah, this is how we collaborated.
What I really liked about the final decisions of our color palette is that Julian chose the VTR room to be that bright, in this bright light gray that is in contrast to the other rooms. And for me, it was always a good reference to the CI of the Olympic Games of Otto Eicher, because they were just amazing and they were so futuristic somehow, and showing what the Olympic Games wanted to be, like something for an open new country. And I think that was a good background for me to have this in one place. We have the more dark, a little bit stale room of Rune's office, and then the bright VTR room that is like a little bit sci-fi look to it. And for me, that was also a good reference for the Olympic Games itself, what they wanted to be at that time. And then unfortunately, this event happened. And and it's so awful. Yeah.
Yeah, and so shattering for the German people who had such hopes to be portrayed in a much different way, you know. Yeah.
So we had, full circle, unfortunately. Yeah.
I mean, there's elements everywhere. There's dressing everywhere when it is so important, but then you're able, like with these 2-inch reels, just even the acquisition of that, this layering is fantastic. And then we come this way, and I so appreciate the fact that you were comfortable with negative space.
Yeah, actually, this is something that, because I mentioned Otto Eicher before, he's so clear in his graphics, and that is something I would like to achieve, or would have liked to achieve at that when we were designing the space, to have, you know, really strong pieces and structured elements, but also leave some room for the rest to be able to show. So you have a game between in an empty space that's not empty because there's still something going on. You have the stripes on the wall, you have the aging of the concrete, and then you go further and you have the graphic, the schedules, the huge schedules where they're putting the teams together, and they should be able to tell their story, all these pieces. So I thought it's nice to have, I'm not a fan of cluttered spaces, so I really enjoy having, as you said, negative spaces. And yeah, in this set, it was actually not that hard to do so. It felt really, it felt good.
Yeah.
It felt genuine somehow.
No, it's excellent. And obviously you see the ABC colors and the stripes and the walls. I'm assuming that's what those were, right? You were trying to have those colors be part of it as they're going past the walls in the corridor. Were those the ABC colors?
It's also the CI of the Olympic, of the Otto Eicher colors, the orange and the yellow.
Orange and yellow.
Blue. Yeah.
But then when you get into the blue, whose is that? The two blues.
It's both. I think it was both.
Okay.
I remember.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's very strong. And that was also such a 70s thing. Putting those stripes on the walls was certainly all over the United States. That was very much of a design element. Yeah.
I was visiting an archive where we were really happy to get a lot of these film rolls. And actually, it was a 70s place. It was a 70s building, and it was still painted with all these graphical elements on the wall. And that was such a joy to go there and go back to our set and see this coming into the right place. And it was great.
And didn't they slept in their offices too when they had to? So
yeah, they did.
It really was his personal space. Okay, so Melanie, why don't you speak to Rune's office, because this was quite a beautifully layered set.
Yeah, what we did in Rune's office, actually, the inspiration came from a visit to Venice that Julian and I and some friends paid together to the Biennale. And there was a room that was almost in this color from the top, from the ceiling to the carpets, just as a whole. And that was a great inspiration for this room. And what I really liked about the room was that we for a backstory, we said, okay, the rooms were prepped by the Germans. So the ABC guys didn't bring their furniture, but they were equipped by a German team before they arrived. So to make things believable that that we're in the 70s, early 70s, we decided not to use only 70s furniture, but also 60s furniture. You can't really see it in this one, but there's a very big sideboard behind Rune right now. There's this a well-known German designer, not that famous, but for collectors, it's a very interesting piece. So that was a nice contrast with which we wanted to bring together the time capsule, the period, and have it as a vivid room, not as a showroom or a showcase for a telenovela, or you find in the prop house, you find the corner of the 70s furniture.
Well, I think that's an excellent point for you to have made, because of course in 1972, there's going to be a lot from the 60s. You know, I mean, people don't,
Yeah.
when the decade switches, you don't all of a sudden empty your entire home or your office or your environment of the pieces from the 60s. So there'd be quite a bit. And that was handled beautifully by you.
Thank you. And also then the contrast again to the VTR room, which is these VTR, these MPEX machines, they were the state of the art at that time. So this was also, I really like the contrast between having the foremost up-to-date equipment and then having a more period older equipped office. And yeah.
When you also captured, even though you're saying that the Germans had equipped it before their arrival, I like your choices, because we know they were your choices, made it feel like very warm and masculine and restrained, you know, very much like the role that Peter played. So I thought that was incredibly well done.
And what I really like about that work, Mel, what you did so, you know, so great here, is it is slightly, the room is slightly under the pay grade of, you know, of the character. So usually in his position, you would have a much more fancy office, but, you know, not to do this and to give him a furniture that is, you know, we know that it's quite a fancy as well, because there's been, you know, a designer piece, but in the general feel, it feels so authentic because it's not right for him. He is, you know, he came in here and you can really feel that. And yeah, I think this is so wonderfully done by the set decoration. I really like that office. Well, the VTR room is really the center of this, and normally or usually we all talk about the control room and other things, and not about the VTR room. But the VTR room is actually it's really the center, and it has also been one of the most expensive and challenging and difficult rooms to create and to design, and it has a reason why we did that, even though it was not scripted. And I think it brings a lot to the story and to the design. So the VTR room is one of the sets that I'm particularly very proud of, because it became a centerpiece of the whole studio set. And this was not scripted in this way, because the original VTR rooms are very small rooms where you have one machine per room, because these machines are so loud. But there has been the idea of showing that the ABC sports team was state of the art, and they were using an equipment that was so modern and unique back in the days, that I wanted to contribute to this. And so we created a huge VTR room that is, as Mel has already pointed out, a bit sci-fi-ish and nearly like a NASA room. It's super bright in contrast to the other rooms, and it has several windows. So it's sitting in the middle of the studio set. And we had a lot of talk and walk scenes, a lot of scenes in corridors or people standing at some corner. And we didn't want to shoot against a flat wall. So this room is always in the background. Even if you're standing in the control room, there are scenes where we are in the control room, and then you see through the door inside the VTR room, and it transports always this idea of having a state-of-the-art technical apparatus. And so I think this room, as we have built, designed, and decorated it, helps a lot to tell something that has been written in between the lines. And that's why we're very proud of this set. I really like it. Still do.
I would say, and I'd like for each of you to answer this, what aspect of this project gave you the greatest sense of accomplishment and fulfillment?
The way we designed and realized the studio set was so collaborative. I mean, we all had to work as a team, because the way Tim and Marcus wanted to shoot, the way the costumes needed to stand out or not, and to be in balance with the design. It was all about these details, as I said. So you couldn't just, go wild. And the way, the set decoration came in and the props, and to work with the sound and also the gaffer, because all the light has to be integrated in the set. Everything to make the documentary style work, and so that we could just move there and have that scene with, Jeff arriving and going through the corridors. This was actually a really long sequence, and it was edited later, but we had more of these sequences. And then to have that analog technique, all that apparatus that was built in, and everything had to work. There was no room for the usual tricks in Michael films, where you cut from one and you cut around it. And when I was standing there and we were shooting this scene with him going through this and coming into the control room, and then later on to take the creativity, take the freedom to go out again to the corridor and discuss a moral dilemma and then go back in again. That gave me really goosebumps when I was standing at set, and I was realizing, damn, this is so beautiful. And it's beautiful because we all work as a team. Like I've never had a teamwork and collaboration before. This made me happy. This was satisfying.
How wonderful. And not something, unfortunately, that I think we hear as many stories of as we would like to. I think that the collaboration is something that is so important within filmmaking. And I think this forum, luckily, because of how it has been set up, certainly we get to hear of the teamwork directly between the production designer and the set decorator, but you don't always hear about it being as collaborative. It sounds like in every aspect and in every level with every participant. And I have to say, I have to believe that your cast was so appreciative of what you two provided for them, because as I mentioned earlier, it is a character, and you, Julian, expanded upon that and said a protagonist and an antagonist at different times. And I hope they expressed their appreciation. And I would imagine a cast of that caliber, I hope they did.
They did many times.
Did. Yeah, they did many times. Yeah,
I would think so.
Yeah, for me, it was the fluidity in everything, actually, with the team collaborations, and then also see the set coming together as just one piece, one big piece that is like a beating heart. That was very, very cool to see. And because in the beginning we were just so focused on all the small things with the technical stuff, and then it just grew like a plant, and then it was there, the whole tree.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of what I appreciate, and any of those of us who are set decorators and production designers will absolutely appreciate too, is that, and I'm happy I got to watch it twice, which isn't always the case when you see a film. The first viewing, I realized quite a bit into it, and it wasn't a very long film, but quite a bit of the way into it, I thought, I have not once been distracted or taken out of the story by wondering about the authenticity or thinking that doesn't quite work, because it all worked so well. And then that was what was lovely in the second viewing, to really knowing the story, to just pay so much attention to your work, and just to feel like, wow, you guys hit it out of the park.
Thank you.
That's great to hear.
So is there anything at all that either of you would like to add, or do you feel that we have covered everything?
There's one thing that I would really like to point out. No, there's several things, but we were talking so much about collaboration in this movie, and I really have to say that this is not something that just happened. This has a lot to do with the work of the producers. These, Philipp Trauer and Thomas Böttger, they are both so dedicated. I've never seen that before. They are involved in every creative process, and they are on set every time, and they just wouldn't leave the set. And Tim has this incredible gift to unify a team around him, and to make sure that everyone is heard and everyone is working on eye level. This is exceptional. This is really great, and so much fun to work with. And he has such a particular and strong vision, and still he gives everyone so much freedom to fill this vision with his own dreams, and your own suggestions and everything. You can, and this is not between the HODs. This is between everyone, and I think this has to be mentioned because this is the center of this collaborative work.
That's lovely to mention. Yeah. And it does come from the top often. They need to be of that spirit and mindset, or it doesn't infiltrate through the crew. So that's nice. I would like to say that, having now seen some of your collaborative work, you two directly as a team after 13 years together, I look forward to your upcoming projects. I think we all will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to that too.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with SETDECOR. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, SETDECOR.com.